Do 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 do. Do 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 do. Do 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 do. 1990s Nintendo for the win. Ah, folks, we are back. More good, awesome weekly Q&A. Just a quick little update on some things. My mom, for those of you guys who reached out, appreciate that, is breathing on her own. So there's some good news on that. She's still in the hospital. My kids have been sick all last week. What's up, Oscar? Good seeing you, brother. So I'm probably a little bit behind, but I mentioned we are going to be launching a couple of just, for those of you guys who want to do more of the Loom stuff, and I'll show you how we actually generate eyeballs to the Loom stuff and onboard people if you guys are looking to do that. We got a little like kind of just standalone paid product, which I've never done before, but just a low ticket kind of thing. For those of you guys who are interested in learning more how to deep dive in that, they're kind of some of the best stuff we've had inside our mastermind. So I'll be letting you guys know when that comes out. Also, we'll be sharing some Sean Clark from Go High Level. We had an awesome conversation right after he just finished his Go High Level Summit. So there's some good stuff in the pipeline. I won't ramble. Let's get into the good stuff. Let's get into some questions. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, Frankie Finn proudly brings to you our weekly Q&A. I watched way too much wrestling as a kid. But you know what? Wrestling was only cool in the 90s. Like Stone Cold, The Rock, like up past that point, I can't watch it anymore. So anyways, let's get into questions. We got Mehmet up front. He says, "Hey everyone, which ads will you pause and why? I have a question regarding of ads testing. There are 3 different ads with served percentage click-through rate, and average CPC. When compared the metrics, I was not really sure which ads need to be paused, so I need your help. Thanks in advance." Mehmet, my man. Okay, here's the deal with paid ads. I ended up taking a coaching program in 2016. Some of you guys will know him. It's a guy named Russ Ruffino. When I was first breaking into the lawyer space and things like that, it really helped actually solidify our agency pricing. There was a lot of good things that came out of it that have since followed. And one of the things, the actual most useful thing is I hadn't realized up until that point, which I'm going to suggest is true for you, Mehmet, is I was flying blind on my ads. Like, imagine trying to fly an airplane and not knowing what any of the equipment says. So I didn't know what my click-through rates were supposed to be. I didn't know what my landing page conversion should be. I didn't know how much I should pay for a booked call. I didn't know how much I should pay for a subscriber. I didn't know how much I should pay for booked business, and I didn't know how much I should charge, okay? So that's like 7 layers of flying blind. And Russ, one of the things he did is he made it really, really clear. And they had a webinar strategy, which we used to... By the way, for those of you guys who are curious, it's a very old video on my channel. It's with my old shitty-ass internal microphone. But you can see our $50,000 a month webinar if you guys are curious to see. I lay out the format and all that so you can create your own. It's like super valuable. It's one of the oldest videos I made on my channel, but it's really, really good. But anyway, one of the things Russ said is... click-through rate, you need at least 1% click-through rate on your ad. Then he said, landing page, you need at least 20% opt-in. Then we were doing a webinar, and he said, you need at least 1 out of 12 people who watch the webinar to book a call. Then he said, you need $100 per book call. You need to close 1 in 4 of those calls. And what will happen if you do that? You'll acquire clients at scale for between $500 and $1,000. And that's the number I would shoot for you. The other thing, though, that I've learned since doing this is there's a hidden metric in paid advertising, which is, are the right people coming through the ads? Because a lot of times, even if you have good numbers, but the wrong people are showing up, like you may have a lot of people clicking and watching and doing the thing, whatever you want them to do, you can still be kind of like not actually producing towards the result you want. But that's my thing for you is, how do you pause ads? Well, you have to know what numbers you're aiming for. Nobody can tell you that, but I would say as a general rule, if you can acquire clients at scale for between $500 and $1,000, do that. But 1% click-through rate, 20% opt-in rates, 1 out of 12 people at some point in the first 90 days to book a call with you, and cost per call of between $100 and $250 per book call, depending on your niche. If you're hitting those numbers, don't pause any of the fucking ads. Like, keep going. If you are missing on those numbers, then you need to pause all of them and go back to the drawing board. And by the way, it sounds like you're running Facebook ads. there's real. I know everybody says all the shit about Facebook ads, like there's so much to do in Facebook ads. There's four fucking things that make Facebook ads work: who you target, what you offer, what image you use, and what you say. People get way too caught up in like trying to only optimize this 10% a day and try and feed it into the algorithm. There's people on the other side of the ad. Optimize those four things and your ads will work better. So that's kind of probably a roundabout way of crash coursing. I can't answer for you which ads you should pause or not pause. But if you're hitting $500 to $1,000 for the right clients coming through, then keep running them, my man. And if you're not, go back to the drawing board and test those four things. So hope that's helpful to you. Frank says, for the past 10 or more years, we have charged our various PPC and Google ad campaigns on a fixed fee model or by the hour, and have never really considered charging a percentage of spend. However, we are starting to get more larger clients that are spending between $50,000 and $100,000 per month, and I feel that we need to reconsider our charging model. What sort of percentages are agencies charging, or what is included for those fees? For example, we have in the past usually charged additional fixed fees or fees by the hour for remarketing, as this can represent quite a lot of extra work. Can you guys help me get a feel for what kind of spend percentages the market is charging these days? This is a deep philosophical discussion, my man Frank, which says, how should you price your shit? I'm a believer, like, there are different ways to price your shit, and I would never say, like, this is the only way. You can certainly charge by the hour. You can certainly charge by the job retainer. You can certainly charge a percentage of spend. You can certainly charge percentage of results, and you can charge all sorts of variations of those. Like I see in e-commerce, people will charge a retainer plus 10% ad spend. You can do that in other niches too. I don't know why they only do it in e-commerce, but I'm a big believer in, as an entrepreneur, what you're really bringing to people is value and results and outcomes, and not time and energy and effort and all those things. You know, like I look at it like if you could give a client, for example, you could say like, this is an actual real scenario that comes up sometimes in our mastermind with web designers. So I say, if you could give a client a website that you have in another market, like let's say your client is in New York City and you have a new client in Los Angeles, and you could say, hey, I could take this guy's website in New York City and make it work for you. It's already working. It's already crushing. We could just adapt and tweak it and, you know, add your phone number and colors and branding, and we could get it up and running in a couple of hours, and it would start performing for you right away. Or you give them the option of, hey, we could do all this custom work and work really hard, and after 6 months of back and forth custom website, we'll get it the way you want. I would tell you 9 out of 10 clients would choose the thing that's the easiest, that produces the outcome. So this is my way of saying your value is not in how much you do it for the hour. It's not in even the size of the client ad spend. It's in the results you produce. So if you understand that, price your stuff relative to the results you're creating. So if, for example, like running a PPC campaign, like if I do this in personal injury, if I just aim it at any personal injury case, then I know that they make about $6,000 per case, right? So I'm going to be able to charge one fee for that. If I aim it at the catastrophic injury cases, they almost always begin at like $100,000 and up. I'm going to be able to charge another price for the same amount of work, right? And then also you mentioned, as clients with bigger budgets, you're able to produce more value, right? Like if you do it for somebody who has $5,000 a month budget, you're not going to produce as much result if they have a $50,000 a month budget. That's just basic math. So this is my way of saying, the longer you do this, think about producing for result. Now, it sounds like in your case, you're doing a lot of like custom Google pay-per-click and things like that. And I would tell you, think about like the top 5 clients you've ever had and narrow it to a niche and like clone those over and over again and build a system around that and charge for the output. Because what will happen is there's a hidden thing in there that it sounds like your pricing model right now is there are 2 things linked together, which I don't generally recommend linking together. Thing number 1 is your time and the money you make. And I don't recommend keeping those linked together, right? If you charge hourly, well, you're going to run out of hours in the day at some point. It's very, very different if you're charging per result. Like let's say you figure out something that works for one lawyer. I'm using lawyer because that's my niche, but you know, whatever, like dentist, doctor, e-commerce, doesn't matter. but you figure out how to get a result for one person, well, you could almost always take that campaign and use it for somebody else. But the second time you do that exact campaign, you can have systems and process it and have it almost be copy and paste for deliverable. And so you can get more results, but less actual effort. So that would be my suggestion to you is think about charging per results, aim your campaigns at bigger results, and then think about how you can clone that for other clients. And what will happen is you'll be able to make way more money doing the same kind of thing. Now, having said that, those are the 4 basic models that I mentioned. You can charge per hour, you can charge per retainer, you can charge like a percentage of the ad spend, or you can charge like a commission on the results, and you can do it any way that works for you. So I'm not telling you have to do that, but I'm a big believer in you're an entrepreneur, charge for the results you create, not how long it costs you to get them, and then think about how to get those results quicker. And then you can like make a lot more money in a lot less time and have an easier agency on the delivery side. So I hope that's helpful for my man. Clint says, does anyone have a client onboarding form they are willing to share? Something that helps with collecting all information needed for new clients and questions for building their ads. I've been adding new clients weekly, and I need a better system to stay organized and for gathering all information needed. Hold on a second for that one. Who's that question by? Let me just check the name once more. Clint, I have a book for you. Big Daddy here's a disorganized mess, but this is Upstream by Dan Heath. And one of the things Dan Heath talks about, he says, if you have a recurring problem in any business or life situation, that almost always that problem is used upstream. So he gives a kind of like, simple example. He says, imagine, for example, that 2 guys are standing by a river, and all of a sudden a drowning little girl starts floating in the river, and she says, help me, help me, help me. And then the guys jump into the river, and they save the little girl. And then 2 minutes later, another little girl goes, help me, help me, help me, I'm drowning. And they jump in and save her. And then another 2 minutes later, another little girl goes, help me, I'm drowning. Well, at this point in the conversation, one of the guys gets up and leaves, and the other guy says, where are you going? There's little girls drowning. And he says, I'm going up the river to find out what the fuck is happening. Okay? So this is my way of saying, in your case, I believe that you have an upstream problem, which is it sounds like you're doing too much custom work. And if you're doing too much custom work, then you're going to need different information from different clients. Like a kitchen remodeler is going to need different information than a dentist. It's going to need different information than a lawyer. That's going to need different information from an e-commerce. So it sounds like part of your upstream problem is not having a narrowly defined client and client avatar, and that just by niching down, you'll be able to reuse information, because what information you need from one dentist is probably the exact information you're going to need from a second dentist. I do have a training coming out this week that shows you our exact onboarding. We do phoneless onboarding, and I'll show you how it works. But part of what makes it work is we have like a narrowly defined group of people. So we need the same information over and over and over again. And then you can create a form or an onboarding process. And I like to think about the key with onboarding that I don't think enough people think about is I want it to be as simple as humanly fucking possible for the client. I want them just to have to click a few buttons or answer a question or two. But the simpler and easier it is, especially if you prefer to deal with clients who are busy and have money, right? Like usually clients with a lot of money are generally busier and have a lot of shit going on. So the more complex your onboarding, the more you'll turn off busy, successful people. So I want it just really simple. Click a couple buttons, blah, blah, blah. Here we go. All right. That's all. I'll send you an update when we're rocking and rolling kind of thing. But if you do that, like I'm suggesting to you in your situation, that your onboarding is probably a mess because upstream you don't have a narrowly defined niche, and therefore you need different information for different people. And so you're trying to wrap your head around, how do I make an onboarding form that captures everything we need? And the answer is not to have a form that answers everything. It's to narrow who you're going after. And then what information you get from dentist 1 is the same information you're going to get from dentist 2, is the same information you're going to get from dentist 3 or 4, or whatever your niche is. I'm just giving an example. And then what happens is then you can create like a simple onboarding process that is reusable and works. You also be able to charge higher fees, by the way, when you get more specialized. So that would be my advice for you, but I'll share some of our onboarding stuff later in the week and tag you in that when we have that. Arsam says, my client's ad manager is showing active status, but the ad itself is not running. I checked the ad library. Now we've decided to boost the post. Can you tell me which one of these would get better results? You got a picture of two ads. Now, this is something like a little bit deeper, Arsam. So the first issue with why isn't Facebook showing my ads, I'm probably not the best one to answer that. Sometimes they're just fucking like that. I don't know, like create new campaigns. Sometimes it's the algorithm says we don't like that you're using this word. There's all kinds of reasons. Try different things. But I noticed in the picture you showed of two different ads that they're the same fucking ad, okay? Perry Marshall calls this idea when you're in the beginning stages and you're trying to make paid ads work, he has an idea that he calls forest, trees, leaves. And forest is like the really big shit, right? Like I want to test a big idea. And trees are like the middle-sized stuff. And leaves are like the little things. So to give you an example of these, forest is like the big thing that's going to change it sometimes is like, what am I actually offering? The trees are sometimes like, what message do I use? Or what image do I use? Or how do I say this thing? And the leaves are things like if I use a yellow button versus a green button, if I boost a post or do this, will it make a difference? And the truth is, in paid advertising, all of those things matter. All of them, 100% of them, right? Like if you change yellow button, green button, you'll get a different result. People will respond differently. It's just part of the deal. But we want to test intelligently. And when you're starting a campaign, what most people do is they test the small shit that will make 1%, 2%, 5% difference instead of testing the big stuff, the offer that will make a 10x, a 20x, sometimes a 100x difference. So my advice to you is if you're going to test two different ideas, I would test two radically fucking different ideas because you want to test big ideas. You want to test forest, big, different ideas. This creative, that creative, not well, if I boost it or do this, because basically what I saw is an ad for 20% off, and those are both the same offer, right? So like you're testing now the minutia, and I'm not against testing minutia, but don't test those first. Don't even test the medium shit like images first. Test the big ideas first. Like, and to me, the biggest four things that'll matter, I guess, are who you target, what you offer, the image you use, and what you say. So those are the four big ideas, and I usually don't go past those four things. I have people test the minutia for me when I get to that point. For the most part, I only want to test those four big ideas. Who are we showing ads to? What are we offering them? What image are we using? What are we saying? And if you do those things in Facebook ads, you'll get the best results that way. Now, having said that, there is no magic fortune teller way. Even like all us seasoned marketers that have been doing this a long time. I was actually talking to Ryan Dice, for those of you guys who don't know him, the digital marketer guy. I was at Traffic and Conversions. This was not recently, like 4 years ago, 5 years ago. And we were talking in the corner of the room. Like nobody was there. And it was like he was about to go on stage, but he kind of had like 10 minutes. And we were talking about paid traffic. And one of the things he told me is when they launch 300 campaigns on Facebook, a digital marketer, they expect 8 to be successful, which means they're wrong 292 times, right? Like they don't have some magic fortune teller way of knowing what the market is. So there's always an element of you just got to put it out there and see what happens. But again, like I mentioned earlier, don't fly blind with paid traffic. Know what sort of numbers you're after, right? Like how much are you looking as a cost per acquisition? If you have an idea of that and you hit your numbers, like keep doing it. So like marketing is two parts, psychology and math. And I don't think enough people understand the really basic math. You have to know what you're aiming for on that. So nail those two things and you'll be a much happier man in general. Juan says, we got actually back-to-back Juan questions here. I think we got 3 actually. No, sorry, I got 2 here. Juan says, if I wanted to sell my services for $1,500, how much should my customers' revenue be? And then also says, the Loom video will describe the marriage or the first date offer. Let's take those two things in order. If you want to sell your services for $1,500, a big secret about this, I call this the double who. The 2 levels of who is once, like ultimately, what I shoot for as a minimum is at least 6x return on investment. I didn't come up with that magically, by the way. Lawyer masterminds, they told me as long as I get a 6x return on my money, I'm happy. So that's what we do. But there are other ways to contribute value to people other than just straight monetarily. Sometimes saving people time and energy. Like I've had people who come into our mastermind who make the same amount of money 2 months later as they were making, but all of a sudden have all these phone calls eliminated. And it's the value is all the time and the energy that they saved and the leverage they've created. So I don't want you to think about it just as a return on money. Also think about it as a return on time and a return on energy. If you think about those things, your offer will become more valuable because you'll think about how can I make people more money easier and faster, right? Like and make it with less mistakes. That's generally a better question. So if you're now, when I mentioned the double who, the reason I mentioned that is I used to be part of things where they tell you if you're going to charge $1,500 for something, then you got to believe it's worth it. And so I used to do all these like affirmations. I'd look in the mirror and be like, I'm worth it. My program's great because of this and blah, blah, blah. And what I realized after years of doing this is our offers are fluid in value, meaning who you do it for makes a great deal of difference. So one of my mentors said he was at his little small town restaurant in his town he lives in of 30,000 people. And the guy said, oh, you do marketing? And he said, consulting. He said, how much does it cost to get you? And he said, typically between $50,000 and $100,000 per year. And the guy went, and the guy was kind of like, no fucking way would I pay you $100,000 per year. But the truth is, for a little teeny tiny restaurant in the middle of nowhere where the owner's probably not even making $100,000 a year, it wouldn't be worth it for him. So your value is fluid depending on who you do it for. So like I see this in like my niche. If I do it for like if I do SEO for one little lawyer, he might be able to pay me between $500 and $1,500 typically. If I do it for a law firm between 50 and 100 lawyers, they won't even take me seriously if I charge them less than 10 grand. In fact, it's probably going to be more like 15 or 20 grand to do SEO for a big law firm. So it's the same service, SEO, but it's fluid depending on who you do it for. So this is my way of saying if you want to charge $1,500 like easily, just go after bigger clients with bigger budgets and you'll be amazed. They can afford $1,500 and it's easy, the value to justify it for them because like, somebody mentioned, I have clients spending $50,000 or $100,000 a month. If they're spending $100,000 a month, like $1,500 is nothing, right? So it's all value is relative who you do it for. The second level of who is your value is relative to who you bring your client. We like to as marketers treat it like all leads are equal. Like if I just bring leads, my clients are going to be stoked. Leads. And the truth is not all leads are equal. Like I see this in the coaching space. Okay, a coach might have a $97 ebook and a $40,000 mastermind. Well, if you're going to bring them leads and they're selling their $97 thing, you're not going to be as valuable if you're bringing them leads for their $40,000 mastermind. So all things being equal, that's my way of saying, figure out who your client wants to bring in, who is their most highest value person, and focus on bringing them. And if you do those two levels of who, meaning you go after bigger clients and you help your clients bring bigger clients, then $1,500 is nothing. You can get $15,000 a month clients on the low side, right? So this is my way of just saying, like, think a little bit bigger on those two who's, and what you'll find is your price will suddenly become very, very easy to be able to charge clients $1,500 a month. Second thing is Loom videos. Do you sell a first date or do you sell a marriage? You can actually do both. You'll notice, like, Oscar was on here earlier. I'm not sure if he's still here now checking us out. But Oscar was asking me, and I sent him some links last week. And the Loom videos we do, typically, depending where I'm at in the journey, I always start with a first date, always. And then once I have a bunch of clients in a first date and I've got things dialed in, if I already know who the right client is, then I may automatically switch over to a marriage offer. And the difference between on a Loom video and a marriage offer in a first date is in the beginning of the Loom video, step one is you demonstrate a result or outcome. When I'm doing a marriage offer, instead of just showing one outcome, I'll show how I've done this for like 5, 10, 20 people. And I'll show a bunch of examples of results we created. And then it's basically the same video after that. It's the 3 to 5 step plan and the offer, right? Like that's the format of these videos is demonstrate something, show your 3 to 5 step plan, offer something easy to say yes to. Having said that, You can do both, but I would recommend working with a few clients and really get dialed in who the right person is. And then once you know that, put that into a video. Like, for example, one of the most powerful things you can do is right after you show a demonstration in your video, say, this offer will be for you if, and then describe who it's for. And then what happens is then you don't necessarily have to go first date. But I would recommend always starting at a first date. And then once you know for sure who the right client is, meaning you've worked with a few and you figured it out and you're like, oh, this type of person is the right person and this one is the wrong person. And then you just describe who the right person is in the video. And then you can go straight to marriage. And it's just a little bit more complex, but it's the same kind of stuff. Oscar says, anyone open to share some looms using your stuff to sell? As I mentioned earlier, shared that with him privately. If you guys are interested, I'm happy to send you examples. I don't usually send my newest Loom videos, and the reason I don't is I've been copied probably like 20, 30 times in my thing. It's really fucking annoying because usually what happens is people copy my shit verbatim and they're really lazy. And all they do is they drown the message with copycats and their stuff doesn't work because, the market doesn't need more copycats. But I'm happy to show you older stuff that we're not currently using so you guys can check that out. And it's the same format. I mean, I've gotten better at them over the years. And I've figured out like how to do them kind of smarter. By the way, people always ask me like why 5-minute Loom videos, and the reason is when I first started, I didn't want to pay for Loom. They have a 5-minute cap, so I was like, all right, I got to sell my shit in 5 minutes. How do I do that? And so that's the magic. But it actually is more conducive to busy, successful people because like business owners that like have a lot going on and have success and have traction don't have a lot of time. The ones with money don't have a lot of time as a general rule. And so if they need a 90-minute phone call to get to the fucking point, they just won't schedule a 90-minute phone call. I've seen this like being part of lawyer masterminds where they'll spend $100,000 in like under 10 seconds without even thinking about it. But what they won't do is give you 60 minutes of their time to spend that 100,000. The opposite is true at the bottom end of the spectrum. The brokest clients got nothing but time and empty calendars, so they'll happily jump into calls. So the cool thing about these Loom videos, I used to think like, well, would I get the right people? Like I always thought the sales calls help screen it. It's really the opposite. We get higher caliber clients by not speaking to them on the phone, if you can believe that, because it respects people's kind of time and busyness. So if you guys are interested in that, give a brother a shout out. I'll send you a link. I'll send you like a message with some of those. We got Juan again. Okay, I missed Juan's third question. Hello, I'm about to start offering an email gratitude campaign for e-com stores as a first date. In case somebody wants to try, how do I manage to do the email campaign? I mean, do they need to give me their login info for the SSP, a CSV with their emails? Frankie Finn et al. How do you handle that? Juan, firstly, I would tell you, like Star Wars, man, do or do not. There is no try. You mentioned in case somebody wants to try. I don't think you ever want to go into an attitude with like, in case a client wants to try. Now, as far as what to do, when I typically run campaigns for clients, I just like, again, this is part of you as an expert in holding your frame. Most people don't realize this, but clients will go whatever direction you kind of like lead them into. And so for me, what I do is I just tell them like, what I need from you is blank. And you just state it like that's how it is. So what I need from you is to give me your login to your email. And what I'm going to do is fire up these 4 emails for you and send them off and we'll manage the responses. If you just say that with enough confidence, certainty, and authority, clients will do it. If you show like, if you give doubt and uncertainty, if you say, well, I'm not really sure what to do here. So this is why I always think about when people are in your stage where they're trying to get a bunch of clients and they're trying to like get some like regular traction in their business, which it sounds like that's the stage you're in. The biggest thing that actually keeps people stuck is they think about like, I need the right message and I need the right script and I need people to say yes to me. But the truth of it is most times is they haven't thought about deeply enough what they would do once somebody says yes. And I actually experienced, this is an embarrassing story, but it's the honest to God's truth. So when I went through a coaching program in like 2016, one of the things they taught me how to do was raise my prices. And it was way beyond my comfort zone. And so I didn't really think anybody would say yes, but I was open and willing to try. And I remember the first time a lawyer said yes. So I told him it was $5,000 for that month, which was way more than I had charged up to that point. I think the most I'd ever charged was like like $1,500 at that point. And so I told him it would be $5,000, and he said, okay. And I had heard from these people, they said it's better to use Stripe than PayPal. And so I stopped using PayPal. And so I went into Stripe and I put the guy's credit card in there. And Stripe gave me an error. And I didn't know what the error was. And so I said, hey, like, guy, I'll call you back. And I went and messaged like Stripe support. Back in those days, there was no like live support. You just send them a message and they respond. It took them a day and a half to respond. They said, oh, you have a new account. It's in sandbox mode. You have to disable sandbox mode and go, I'm doing this for real. And then I ended up trying to call that lawyer back. It was like 2 days later, and he kind of ghosted me and flaked on me, which I don't blame him at all. But the truth of it is, I didn't fucking know what I would do once somebody said yes. And so you better believe I worked on that. I figured out, okay, here's how I process the payment. Here's how I'm going to onboard them. Here's what I'm going to do. I didn't necessarily have to figure out like the next 6 months, but I had to know at least immediately after the next like 3-4 steps I was going to take. And as soon as I had that solidified in my mind, and I could do that with confidence and certainty, I stopped treating the payment like this big fucking deal. Because when you're in the beginning and nobody's paying you, we tend to treat the payment as like a big fucking deal. And instead, it was just another link in the chain. The price is $5,000. Okay, let's process it. Okay, here's what we're going to do next. Okay, here's how we get started. And it was just another step in the process. And the more you can treat the payment part of it like another step in the process, and then the onboarding like another step in the process, they'll just go along with it because you're the one like leading them. You're the leader in that scenario because you're the expert. So you got to show up with confidence and certainty. And that's my way of saying, like, what I need from you is give me your fucking email login. And if they have any concerns about it, you say, look, I have no interest in emailing your people Viagra or anything like that. I'm not stealing your data. I don't care about any of that. I just want to send out the campaign. If you want to look over the campaign, you can. But let's get it out there. Let's run it. And what you'll find is people will do it because you do it with confidence and certainty. And this is the same in text. Doesn't really matter. So my advice for you is really think about what you actually need to do in your own mind to actually send the campaign and get results. And then just tell them that's how it is. And they'll do it. So hopefully that helps you a little bit, Juan. Sean says, is it possible to find salespeople / appointment setters that work on commission only? Am I finding that I can sell warm leads, but my hunting, cold calling skills are not good? Any advice? Oh, I feel you, man. I really do. Like, for real. On this scenario, Sean, like, I was really shit for a lot of years at anything like cold traffic, cold leads, cold anything. And so I could close referrals, I could close warm stuff, and it made it really, really easy. But when I didn't have that expert frame, and people weren't coming to me, I didn't know what to do. And cold stuff was just a fucking nightmare for a lot of years. I'd probably say like 7 years I sucked at anything cold. Eventually figured out some things and some paid traffic. But this is my way of saying for you, yes, you can find commission-only appointment centers, but I wouldn't recommend it. I'm going to go on, this is Frankie Finn, like, rant for a little bit. I don't know why everybody in our fucking industry thinks the solution to everything right now is appointment setters. I have 20 people a week cold pitch me about booked appointments and appointment setters. Okay? This is the equivalent today of what I call digital door knocking. Remember, like, people used to do a lot more door-to-door selling. Knock, knock, knock. Do you want to buy a vacuum cleaner? If you knock on enough doors, somebody will buy a fucking vacuum cleaner. But it is much more intelligent to drive inbound stuff. And then if you're really good at warm, make all your shit warm. And so my kind of process for doing that, like, I look at it, okay, I'm going to write a post on this, but the other thing about like doing this intelligently is it's far more leverage and energy efficient. So, okay, if you send 10,000 email messages and knock on 10,000 doors, somebody's going to buy some shit from you. Okay. Having said that, do you think it's more efficient to knock on 10,000 doors, or do you think it's more efficient way to find somebody in your industry who already has 10,000 people who are proven to buy and make one offer to that person to do something that's a value add so that you can simultaneously be put in front of 10,000 people. So I'll give you an example. I could send 10,000 messages to lawyers, or I could find somebody like my friend Michael Mogul, who you guys may have seen on this, who's built a $50,000 a year or $50 million a year video agency and has a conference going on this month right now for 10,000 lawyers. Now, what do you think is a more efficient way of doing it? Is Send 10,000 messages or talk to the guy who's got 10,000 people and go on one stage and be in front of 10,000 lawyers at once. And both of them work, by the way. So this is my way of saying, so for some reason, like everybody thinks I'm the cold outreach guy because so many people ask me questions about it. But I do very, very little cold outreach other than testing my messaging. And I do almost all of it intentionally driving inbound. So it's all fucking warm. And the way I think about that is there's a concept in this book here, which it's only like half a page, but it's a concept I call the shoe store. And what I do, in essence, to drive warm inbound shit is if you think about if your product as a pair of shoes, what most people do is they chase down people who are barefoot, people who logically, like somebody who's barefoot logically needs shoes. They're hurting their feet. They have all the reasons in the world to need shoes. But the actual best person to sell your service to is somebody who has a closet full of 200 pairs of shoes. So they have Nikes, they have Reeboks. And in our world, this looks like Google AdWords. They have Facebook. They have a web design. They may pay for offline stuff. Like in my case, they may pay for radio and TV and billboards and bus stop ads and all those kind of things. And those are the best people to go after that have closets and full of shoes because they've proven to buy what you sell. Like you may run into clients who've grown for 40 years word of mouth, and even though they logically need shoes, they will never buy them because they just don't buy shoes. And if they do, they'll try them on and go, I didn't really like the shoes, right? They have a very different approach, as where there's the people who have 200 pairs of shoes always need more shoes. They need Reeboks. They might need like hiking shoes. They might need dancing shoes. They might, like my old basketball shoes don't work anymore. I need a black pair of shoes to match this outfit. There's always a reason why they need new pairs of shoes. So what I do is identify who else is selling them shoes. And so like, who's selling them AdWords? Who's selling them Facebook? Who's selling them websites? Who's selling them TV? Who's selling them the software? Who's selling them the tools? And I go to those people and I say, hey, I have a value add for your people. And I do usually for me, it's like a training or something like that. And I will drive inbound to us so that I don't have to deal with cold leads at all. So my suggestion to you is not try and find an appointment setter, but figure out if warm is working for you. Be more intentional about driving warm. And I just gave you the keys to the castle because the best warm traffic are people who've proven to buy what you sell. So go to the shoe stores and figure out how you can be a value add. Like let's say, for example, I don't know this, but I know, let's say you do reviews, right? Like I don't know what your service is, but let's just pretend, for example, you do Google reviews. I have a friend who's gone into like contractor associations and created a free training for them to show them, here's how you can claim your reviews and fix them and blah, blah, blah. And at the end of the training, there's a, hey, if you just don't even want to do this and you want someone else to do it for you, here's how you can hire us to take care of this. But it's a value add because they train them how to do the actual thing you're doing. So I always say, like, give the good ideas away for free and charge for the implementation. That's the easiest way to get clients is, like, tell somebody, if you do SEO, tell them how they can get number one. Tell them all the things they got to do. Tell them how to beat their competitors and all those things. And then when they want to actually do it, charge for the implementation. If you do this, all you got to do to drive more inbound is find somebody who's already got 10,000 of your fucking buyers already. Do one little fucking 20-minute training for them, and you'll have 500 fucking inbound leads that are all warm. Like, I don't understand why everybody wants to knock on doors in our industry. Even with paid traffic, we're doing things right now that are really, really advanced to warm up strangers. And I'm going to show them to you guys. I'm finally getting around to making the training. My kids have been sick a few weeks. But you guys can be so much smarter and more strategic. I always say this in our mastermind is not enough people in this business are strategic. I compare it to playing checkers. Checkers is a really simple game. Move left or right. When you get to the end of the board, you can move backwards too. But for the most part, like, what are you going to move? Like, you can teach somebody to play checkers in 10 fucking minutes. Chess is a strategic game. Real advanced chess masters are thinking 5 moves, 10 moves, sometimes 20 moves in advance. And if you just like think 2-3 moves in advance, which most agency owners don't, you can crush your competition because all of them are just thinking about what's the perfect outreach script? How can I blast as many people? How can I do a gazillion door knocks? And I think about who's already organized all the buyers in the industry, get in front of them and do one little thing to drive a shit ton of massive inbound. If you do that, life's going to get a whole bunch easier. Ajoy, I hope I'm saying your name correctly. He says best niches in 2022. This is a pretty broad thing. What I'll tell you is more about which niches to avoid, and as long as you're not in one of those, because what most people don't realize is there's niches within niches. I call this the nickel and the $100 bill, and within every niche there is a spectrum. As long as there is a niche at all, somebody is doing some business and somebody is making money. So I see this. There are broke starting out lawyers trying to make their first $30,000, $40,000. And there are law firms doing $500 million with a B. There are contractors who are just getting started trying to make 20 grand, get their first couple of jobs. And there are contractors who have 40 different crews across 3 states, right? And so there's always a spectrum in this. And what I focus on doing is finding the niche within the niche. I call this the nickel and the $100 bill. And the $100 bill is what is the most expensive thing my market sells or offers. That's all, like, people are already buying. So I discovered this by accident. When I used to do plastic surgery, I just treated as long as I was generating leads and phone calls, I thought everything was good. And one day a plastic surgeon said to me, he said, "Hey, Frankie, do you think you could build us a mommy makeover website?" And it's like, yeah, I mean, there's no difference between a mommy makeover website and your standard plastic surgery website. Like, different content on it, but it's the same basic process. So I said, yeah. And he said, "Do you think we could rank for mommy makeover keywords?" And so I went into the Google keyword tool in those days, and I was like, yeah. And he said, "And do you think if we built a website and ranked for those keywords and did that process, do you think like we would get mommy makeover phone calls?" And I said, "Of course." And I realized what he was most after was his highest, most valuable thing. So the best niches are the high profit, in my opinion, sub niches where clients make a lot of money. So like in coaching, I mentioned this earlier, they might sell a $97 ebook and a $40,000 mastermind. If I'm picking a niche, I'm not picking just coaching. I'm picking I will specialize in helping you sell your $40,000 mastermind, the niche within the niche. So the niches to avoid in general are niches that don't do any paid ads. So a lot of like different programs, like, you know, for different reasons, if they can't do it legally, or businesses that are largely insurance driven can be no-goes. So like, for example, like I wouldn't work with a general practitioner doctor because their business is all insurance and referral driven. I wouldn't work with a heart surgeon, even though they're probably cool people, for the same kind of reason. But for the most part, I see this all the time where people think my niche is bad, and it's not that their niche is bad, it's that they're aiming for the wrong sub-niche. Either they're aiming for the brokest people or they're selling the lowest value leads in the game. And so all you have to do in any niche is identify who's got the money and what are the highest value things they sell. And if you aim for that, any niche is good. As long as there is a niche, there's money to be made. And having said that, one other consideration I might think about would be a no-go is a kind of like a recession proof. If there's niches that, if you're dealing with a niche, question I ask myself, would this be a harder hit niche in a recession? I might avoid it. Like, for example, we had a bunch of people who came to us in 2020 that were in travel and tourism, and then lockdowns and stuff happened, and they, you know, like you couldn't really be open. So like they had to pivot and do something different. If I'm in a niche that just doesn't work in the economy that we're in, then I would pivot in that. But for the most part, like, pick a general niche, like say you're going to work with dentists. Don't stop there. Go a level deeper and think about who are the dentists with money and what is the highest value thing they sell, and aim for that, and then you'll always have a good niche. So if you do that, if you think more sub-niche than niche, that's at least for me, I found that's the best way to do it. Josh says, what's the biggest disqualifying factor when bringing on a new client, in your opinion? Josh, biggest disqualifying factor for me, I mean, there's a couple. Firstly, is clients reveal themselves as like halfway committed if they have little teeny tiny budgets. Like, I'll give you $200 and you better make me rich for this $200. If they say stuff like that, like that's a disqualifier for me, because you're just not going to have a good experience with that. Another obvious one is attitude. You can sometimes tell this just in text or a phone call, even before you work together, like where they're like, I just want the fucking price. Tell me the fucking price. And it's not necessarily that they're asking for the price. It's how they're asking, like really douchey and like, just fucking answer me. You work for fucking me, right? Like that kind of condescending attitude. Like that's when I'm just like, yeah, fuck you. um, as well. This is a giant red flag, is that they say the last fucking 12 agencies we had all scammers and ripped us off and fucked us over. Well, chances are you ain't going to be different. You're going to be the 13th in their mind, because usually they're unwilling to fix their own internal processes and systems. And then so the agency, and there are shitty agencies out there, but no agency will succeed if they have perpetually bad problems. It's like, a girlfriend who like meets 6 guys in a row who all like are abusive and kick the shit out of her. Chances are, like, I'm not wishing harm on anyone, but the 7th guy is probably going to be more of the same, right? Like they're just not set up to win in their mind. So as a general rule, we help winners win more. We don't help losers become winners. We help winners win more. We don't help losers become winners. And then there's clients who have no real goal in mind. Or some clients, you ask them to implement basic shit and they don't implement basic shit. But those are probably the biggest red flags. They got no budget. They got a shitty attitude. They've had nothing but problems with their last agencies. They have no goal, or they're just not willing to implement stuff. If you avoid those things, you'll end up with only good clients on the other side for the most part. Will says, how important would you consider email marketing being of part your delivery vehicle for fulfilling your offer? I mean, this is a little bit of an open-ended question, Will. So for me, by the way, happy birthday, brother. I sent you some hilarious gifts in your inbox. How would you consider email marketing? It depends on, really, like I always say, like there's not enough people realize your agency is your fucking business and you can build it however you want. What I think about when I'm sending email, and this is a little bit of a magic trick, but I think about what is going to work for a client the quickest, the easiest, produce the most meaningful, small but meaningful result. And almost always, I would say like 99 times out of 100, if you're working with the right clients, it is going to be using resources they already have and not bringing new resources. Now, this is different than how most agencies think, okay? What most agency owners think is that, excuse me, that water went down a little wrong. Most agency owners think that we must drive new business. In other words, we must take resources a business does not currently have or possess and drive them new resources. And the reason they do this is really fucking simple, is because business owners say, I need more new resources. I need new people. Bring me resources, right? And so we take that at face value and we go do it. But I'll tell you, 99 times out of 100, there are resources which they already possess that are not being fully utilized. And so what I tend to do is I tend to ignore their supposed request for new resources. And I think about, what are the most valuable resources they already have that aren't being fully tapped? And I'll tell you, 9 times out of 10, it is their customer list. Now, I'll say 1 out of 10 times, it's what I call the almost sales. Like, for example, if an agency, like most agencies don't realize that if you have a booked appointment with somebody, and they don't hire you and take your thing, if you just simply had some sort of automated follow-up, in the next year, some of those people will come back, right? That's a resource they already have. They already have a list of people who've booked appointments with them. So what I think about when I'm running email is I'm just thinking about using their highest, most valuable resources. Does it have to be email? The answer is no. In fact, we have guys in our mastermind who do a lot with SMS. Like one of our guys, Robert, comes to mind, where he's helping e-commerce stores, and he's just texting out offers with SMS. Hey, you came to our store and you bought something. We really appreciate you, and this thing is complimentary to the thing you bought. Why don't you buy this thing as well? And again, what we're doing with that is we're going into a business and thinking about what resources do they already possess. Now, the cool thing about it is when you think this way, you become more resourceful because we're using resources they already fucking have, right? Like, instead of having to, like, everybody thinks you have to run paid ads and drive cold traffic, and those things work. So I'm not saying not to do it, but that's the hardest money. That's the resources I don't possess. And so what I think about is using resources they have. And email is often the easiest, lowest hanging fruit. So I just actually ran a campaign for a real estate guy. We're kind of testing the waters with some new stuff right now. And, it's an $8 million business and they got, I don't know, a lot of fucking customers, like 10,000 of them. So when we send a campaign, even if we move the needle 1%, what's 1% of 10 million, by the way? The answer is 100 grand. So if we're able to produce 100 grand worth of sales, it's pretty easy to say like, well, I want 30, 40 grand. So I think about both those two things is like, what are the resources they have? And I think about what are businesses that have a lot of resources already that they're not using. So I'm actually working on, you guys saw I did an interview with Jay Abraham, but we're actually working on a little back end deal together. It's been about 6 months in the work. Probably a little slower than I'd like, but man, like working with a legend, just really, really cool. And one of the things about Jay is they already know there's value in their customer list. That's what they've been preaching to people for 40 years. And they have probably 100 courses and sales letters and all the materials to go sell. Like they have a shit ton of resources. The reason they don't use them, it's because they're too busy, right? Like they just like they have a lot going on. Like most businesses, they know they could do 100 things and they have time to do 3. So they already know like 97 other things at work. They want somebody to come in and just do it for them and take their resources and extract the gold out of it. So having said that, you can use email, you can use text, you can use whatever. But what I just had a talk, Will, with Sean Clark from the founder of Go High Level. And this was one of the things we talked about is if you talk to 10 businesses, like 9 of them aren't really struggling with leads. Leads is not, they say they want leads, but you know how you go get leads? You go to the fucking traffic store, Google, Facebook, TikTok, whatever. You put in your fucking credit card and you type in a fucking ad and within an hour, you'll have ads running, right? It's not that hard to turn on the traffic machine. What they actually struggle with is nurturing those leads and actually closing. And so the real value we bring to our relationships is not in generating leads like everybody thinks. It's in nurturing and closing. And if you think about that, you go, how can I nurture and close the resources they already have that already have like an existing relationship? And the beauty about this is like it's dog shit easy with customer lists. So that's where I usually like to start. I'm not saying it's the only way to start, but I think about resources they already have, use them, and you'll make your life a whole bunch easier. Well, guys, it's been a good one. 52 minutes. I think that's all the questions we got so far. Just a quick little announcement for those of you guys who missed it. I know I've been a little late on it, but I've got first time in a while. We're actually launching a course, and it'll have kind of 3 different parts to it, depending on what you guys want. But it's a low ticket thing. You guys can check it out. It's really a best of stuff from our mastermind. Is really dog shit simple, like 4-sentence ads that we're using to crush it. Sometimes we spend like $100 and make like $60,000 in sales. We'll give you those ads. As well, like how, the latest and greatest updated on how we're closing in Loom, plus some examples and a checklist so you can build your own. And then as well, like some onboarding stuff for how we phoneless onboard people, really make it easy. Oh, Brent's here, man. We were just talking right before this. Good to see you, Brent. Brent says, I used to produce a weekly price sheet I sent out in a niche. They would tell me to fax it to them instead of emailing it because they got so many emails. They preferred me to send it via fax so it'd be more easily in front of them. Totally, dude. I would say like, a lot of the old school stuff, like fax and direct mail, works even better because nobody does it. I always think about, and this came from Tools of Titans by Tim Ferriss. And, there was a section in the middle of the book, for those of you guys who remember the book, or, most of you guys know who Tim Ferriss is. In the middle of the book, he had 17 questions for life, and these were Tim Ferriss's questions. And he said that he liked to keep a list of really good questions because he found that, like, yeah, having a good answer is good, but answers come and go. Good questions lead to good answers. And so whenever he was stuck on something, he would go back to his good questions. And one of the questions in there that I always remembered, he said, what is the least crowded channel? And what most people, by the way, do is they go to the most crowded channel. If you think about email outreach, why do people email? Because it's free and it takes 2 seconds to send an email. And as a consequence of that, a close second might be like LinkedIn. Those are really crowded channels. I'm not saying they don't work and you can't make them work, but there's more effort required to stand out. When I send a letter in the mail, or I guess, depending on the fax rules of where you live, but if you send a fax, if you're able to send a fax, depending on what you do, like those stand out from the fucking noise, especially the direct mail, because that's what we do. I shouldn't say fax because I don't know all the laws and legalities. I'm not trying to steer you guys towards fax. But thinking about zigging when everyone else zags, like almost always, like you'd be amazed. If we send $100 of direct mail, which is about 100 letters, it's about $1 a letter using click to mail. I can see how many people actually, like, because Loom shows the statistics of how many people actually watch. We get 25% to actually watch our videos through, and we'll probably get anywhere from 5 to 15% sales on those. So we might like sign 5 clients from 100 mailers. And sometimes we get 0. Like, I'm not telling you guys like I hit a home run every time. I strike out just like anybody else. But you know, if you spend $100 on Facebook ads or you spend $100 on email and you got a fucking 25% open rate, like you should be doing jumping jacks. And the reason most people don't do that is because they're going to the most crowded channel. It's really hard to have like high open rates when they're getting 1,000 fucking emails. In fact, I actually mentioned this before, but in 2007, I started to see cold outreach blow up for SEO. And my clients would tell me they would get 100 messages a week about cold outreach. So that's 5,000 messages a year if you think about that. And if those businesses have been around 15 years, they've got 5,000 messages a year every year. So they're now at like 50,000, 70,000 people have pitched them SEO in their inbox. Real fucking hard to stand out like that. So I like what you said. You know, it's the power of zigging when everyone else zags. Like, I'm not against outreach, but I like to do it in a way that I know I'm going to be different and stand out from the noise. And that's the other thing too, is, as Brent mentions, is a lot of times people ask me, what's the best channel to go get clients? And the truth is, it fucking depends where your clients are already, right? Like if you're dealing with e-commerce store owners, they're probably in a lot of Shopify groups on Facebook. If you're dealing with, I don't know, like professional groups like accountants and engineers or whatever, they're going to probably be on LinkedIn where other professionals go. If you're dealing with like kind of offline-y, what I call the redneck niches, where you've got like, you know, a contractor who swings a hammer, a lot of those guys are just like hanging out in real life, right? So like old school, like telephone, fax, phone call, like those things actually like work better in those niches. So you want to think about where your audience is already and go where they go, and then think about how you can stand out from the noise. You do those things and your life will get a whole bunch easier. So that's all I got for you guys this week. Thank you guys for another awesome session of this. Always fun to do this and hang out with you guys. Today is Halloween. We're taking the kids to eat copious amounts of candy. They just got better. Probably going to make them sick again. Crazy world. Anyways, much love for you guys. May the force be with you, and talk to you guys soon.